of the mountain. The Arkenstone. Thror named it the King's Jewel. He took it as a sign that he's right to rule.
All right, Nolan.
That's funny. Welcome, yes, welcome everybody. It is time for us to go into another Torn Tuesday conversation here on theonering.net. You have reached your destination for the J.R.R. Tolkien fan community on the web. Theonering.net, been around for 20 years. Plus, we are now in our 8th year. Is that right, Justin? We're now in our 7th or 8th year of doing our live stream show. So buzzing in my ear is our background producer, Justin. And here, myself, I'm Clifford Broadway. Good to see you. Hi, everybody. And I'm a writer and contributor on The One Ring for 20 years and on. I can't believe it's been this long. So we're going to talk about the conversation about 4K. We're getting into a deep into the weeds in this conversation about the ultra high def releases of The Hobbit and the Lord of the Rings trilogy. It's coming out just around the corner, and here to answer all the questions that the fans have been asking all this time. Joining us is our special guest, Mr. Bill Hunt, the creator, founder, and the editor-in-chief of The Digital Bits, one of the most famous web portals for the digital destination for, I should say, all the fans of Blu-ray, DVD technology, and 4K that has been evolving over the years. And he's an author, extraordinary person. Welcome to the show, Mr. Bill.
Thank you. Hey, it is really good to see you guys.
Welcome.
I'm looking forward to chatting with you about all this.
Well, no, you've been with us before. I mean, let's go back. How many years ago did we sit down at Meltdown Comics? May they rest in peace. And Meltdown Comics, we were there with Michael Pellerin, who was the documentarian and the director and producer of all the appendices that are on the wonderful extended editions. When we sat down, we've had many a great conversation. So welcome back. For the audience that's coming in to join us live, you can follow us on the interwebs with your digital devices. We're on Twitter Live, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Periscope, and Twitch. We're on many platforms. If you want to know, this is a pre-recorded session that we're doing, even though this is broadcast on a Tuesday, but we will be broadcasting live, a live component. We have something exciting to share with you at the end, near the end of our segment with Bill. We have the exclusive, the first from Warner Brothers Home Entertainment. We have the very first 4K clips from the up-resed, upscaled, radical new ultra high def, and we're going to be broadcasting a couple of clips. Except listen to that. Do you hear all that traffic? You hear all that?
By the way, that siren is because you said up-resed, upscaled, and it's actually not up-resed and upscaled. It's a full film scan in 4K.
Yes, okay. Let's be absolutely technically correct. Full 4K, absolute from the, oh my God, we're going to talk about the film sources, the technical details. If you, ladies and gentlemen, you're with us, you're here at the right time, at the right place to talk about 4K, ultra high def of The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings. And at the end of the show, we're going to show that clip. I will take a moment to, shut my windows. I think I live right here in Hollywood, and there's always traffic and ambient noise going on. So shut my windows. But Bill, tell me, from the beginning, tell us a little bit about the digital bits and how the digital format, people moving from VHS tapes to beta to laser discs and then ultimately to DVDs and then Blu-rays. We're talking about a wide evolutionary, stream of digital media, and you're at the cutting edge to let all the consumers and all the fans know that when the movie studios had what type of video out and how good a quality it was on their DVDs, and everybody came to you like you were the faithful lighthouse in the storm of digital media. You were the lighthouse for us. Tell me about that, how that started.
Well, I'll tell you, so I studied film at the University of Wisconsin in Madison, and I graduated in 1990. And then I proceeded to work for about the next 10 years. I worked as a video producer doing commercials and industrial videos, things like that. But I'd studied film, so that was always my interest. And so I was a big Laserdisc fan like everyone else, and I was collecting movies on VHS and that sort of thing. And when DVD first started to happen, like before news broke in the media, when it was happening within the industry, I was catching wind of these developments, and so I started contacting the studios and asking. So I'm hearing about this, I'm hearing about DVD, that you guys are working on this format. What's it all about? And they shared all of that information with me. They were eager to share that information with me. And just as someone, within the industry. And so I started sharing that information on my personal Earthlink page back in like 96 or so.
Okay.
And
Wait a minute. Earthlink? No
Earthlink,
way.
right. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So
And
for
I
those
started
fans who
to-
watch those fans who watch Captain Marvel and they make those jokes about
Right.
1990s computers and what are we waiting for? We're waiting for it to download. That's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Earthlink. Okay.
Yeah, dial-up days. It was crazy. And I was sharing this, and I started sharing this. I started first had an email newsletter that I was kind of sharing information, and then I had a little Earthlink page. And within a month of me doing that, Earthlink called and said, "You're getting way too much traffic. You should buy a domain name and actually start a website because you're getting a huge amount of traffic." And so I did that in 1997. And just as DVD was kind of starting to appear, and it just exploded. And what I found out was that my first readers were studio executives, were film directors, were guys like George Lucas and James Cameron, and Ridley Scott and their people. And because there just was nobody covering this stuff. And we were talking about, hey, we've just heard that Alien is coming to DVD, and a new special edition, and we were getting this information direct from the studios before even the filmmakers were hearing it. And so it just took off, and I've been doing it ever since. We went from obviously DVD and that first kind of format war with DVD and the kind of pay-per-view DivX disc format that kind of embroiled the industry for a little while. And then we moved, and then we moved from that into toward high definition discs, and then there was obviously another format war with HD DVD and Blu-ray, and then now here we are with 4K. And I've been covering this, my team and we've been covering this stuff ever since. And so I've been doing this for 22, 23 years now.
Welcome.
Just the website. Yeah. A long time.
Welcome to what we call the old school websites.
Right,
welcome.
Exactly. If you're old enough to remember TVs with rabbit ears.
I mean, the fact that we have a .net is hilarious to me. That is hilarious to me still. Yep. After all this time. But now let's talk about you being really up close and personal with the history of the Lord of the Rings being transferred from this format into what will be ultra high def. And you know that I just recently found out about this, but Wingnut Films, which is the production company that Peter and Fran have down there in New Zealand, they've been working on this for a year now, getting this ready for what will be the ultra high def. What do you know? Tell me.
Well, so quite a bit actually. The interesting thing is I started hearing from my industry sources that Warner Brothers was interested in doing new 4K scans, 4K release of The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit over a year and a half ago. The interest kind of started to percolate, and so those are the extended edition Blu-ray sets. And obviously I know I have, like as you guys, I have a lot of contacts down at Weta and down in New Zealand, and I've been friends with Michael Pellerin, who was of course the tremendous Blu-ray producer, the special edition producer, created all those amazing documentaries for the set. I've known him for 20 years.
Now that's because before he became an award-winning producer director for Lord of the Rings trilogy, he was working with Disney at Buena Vista Home Entertainment, as they're properly called, and he was doing these unbelievable detailed boxed special sets of Tron and anniversary editions, and getting
for
stuff
Laserdisc, by the way, for Laserdisc and DVD. That's where he started.
That's where he started. Fantastic. So that explains why Peter Jackson looked at his resume and said, wow, this is the guy who can document what's going on a production and really keep track of the history of it and the artwork and the different people who bring it all together. For heaven's sake, he's been a friend of The One Ring in the past, and we had a live chat with him, didn't we, Justin?
We sure
Justin,
did,
I know you're in there. We had an anniversary show not so long ago.
Nice.
That was, yeah, the 20th anniversary of them beginning filming of Fellowship of the Ring.
Yeah,
So, yeah, Mr.
absolutely.
Pellerin. So,
So getting back to the 4K. So the
yes.
interesting thing is that about a year and a half ago, I started to catch wind that Warner Brothers was interested in doing it. And then, of course, there's all kinds of sort of procedural things that have to happen, and the decision has to get made, that sort of thing. But you know, going back to the previous Blu-ray set for a minute, I remember. So when the films were completed, when the 3 Lord of the Rings films were completed, at the end of that process, this would be 2001, 2002, 2003. An HD master, it was probably a 2K scan, but essentially it's an HD master of those films was created. So then when it was time to do the special edition, the extended edition Blu-ray sets, rather than doing going to this, right, to scan the film, what New Line and Warner Brothers did was take those HD masters and use those. And obviously Peter Jackson and Andrew Lesnie, the late Andrew Lesnie, and Peter Doyle, who was the colorist for the films, they took that HD source and they did the best job they could in terms of kind of digitally remastering, color grading, tweaking, and they obviously approved that process. Peter did, and Andrew did.
Is that where the infamous green tint happened?
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. So
yeah, a lot of my fans would not let me not get away with not mentioning that. I'm sorry.
Right.
Sorry to interrupt.
I have a lot of readers who had the same situation. The thing is Peter and Andrew did absolutely approve that master, but the problem was, because they had to use that original HD source material, there was only so much they could do, and the scanning, the film scanning technology of the day wasn't even anywhere near what it is now. So there were flaws inherent in that video. One of them being that sort of green tint that were hard to overcome. But it is absolutely true that Jackson and Lesnie were involved and approved that, and did they did their best with what they had. But the good news is, for this new 4K release, rather than going back to that existing video material, what Weta, and it's, by the way, and it's Weta in New Zealand that's doing this. And it's Peter Jackson is supervising it personally. What they've done is they've gone back to the original film elements, the original camera negative and 35 millimeter camera negative, and the original 35 millimeter film outs. Now, the film out, let me explain the film out process. Back in the day, 2001, 2002, 2003, this was really early in the digital days, very, very early digital days. So when visual effects were completed digitally, rather than just storing them on drives, what typically the film companies would do is they would print that out to film, that final effect shot. They would print that out to film in the highest resolution available in that render. And that's how they would store, that would be their archival storage mechanism for that particular visual effect shot. And so what Weta's done is they've gone to all the original camera negative of the live action stuff, and they've gone to all of that original film out, that film printed VFX shots. And they've scanned it all in native 4K.
Native 4K.
In native 4K, scanned it fully in native 4K. So you're going to see every bit of the resolution that is in that negative, and that was in that rendered film out element.
And for those who are newbies to the conversation between Blu-rays and what ultra high def really looks like, are you telling me, in layman's terms, that this is going to look so much different, that the Fellowship of the Ring will be like, whoa, I can see the windshield of that car that was allegedly in the field in the background? Really?
Yeah, you're going to see a dramatic improvement in detail.
Wow.
Fine detail in the resolution of the image.
Okay.
Plus, the interesting thing about 4K. So what New Line, or what Weta has done and Peter's done, they've created new 4K, what's called digital intermediates. So a digital intermediate is basically the new negative, right? It's in the digital era. It's what we call the negative is, basically. And not only have they scanned everything in 4K for the Lord of the Rings films, but they've done a brand new color grade from the ground up to be exactly what they want it to be. And Jackson has supervised that, and Peter Doyle, the original colorist for the films, has been involved in that process.
To finally address that centuries-old complaint about that green tint, that different tint, which I only noticed when under extreme scrutiny when I was on a website where somebody was showing me side by side what that was. And And also with those digital elements being completely what you call film out elements,
Yeah.
with those
The
being
VFX
all at the highest level of grade, does this also mean the visual effects will be with the live action a little bit differently? Will Gollum be interacting with his live action world in a little bit of a crisper, sharper? I wonder what we're going to notice.
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, there's a difference when they printed I think it was probably 2K resolution that they rendered the visual effects in. But when they printed it out, obviously all of the detail in that render is in that film element, and so that's important. And we haven't seen that yet, even on the Blu-ray, because you have to remember the Blu-ray elements. The Blu-rays were built from HD scans that were done almost 20 years ago.
Right.
So the scanning technology that we have now, the film scanning technology we have now, is dramatically improved from what we had then.
Wow.
So you're absolutely going to see detail, and even in the visual effects that you've never seen before. Certainly in the original camera negative, you're going to see detail you've never seen before. And here's the other thing that's important: is this color grade is being done in high dynamic range. So high dynamic range is really important. That's one of the big selling points of 4K discs. It's not just the added resolution that you get, but high dynamic range expands the color. So the brightest areas of the frame get brighter, the darkest areas of the frame get darker, but you gain detail in those areas at the ends, right? So you're gaining detail there. And on top of that, because you're expanding that range of contrast, the amount of color information that you see is expanded as well. So now you're seeing with 4K and high dynamic range, you're seeing about 80% of the color that the human eye can see, compared to much less with just regular HD. So everything, so what the effect of that is, when you look at, like, when you see a candlelight, or when you see a flame, or when you see a bold sunlight in a 4K image, it is more naturally bright. It looks more lifelike. And because you're seeing more detail and more contrast, more color information, you get an illusion of depth that's greater than you see with Blu-ray.
It's abundantly clear why the Tolkien community is just wild about this upcoming 4K release. And it's not just the Tolkien community, it's worldwide, the cinema community, the people who love beautiful artwork, beautiful photography. And I'm trying to acknowledge Andrew Lesnie, the late great Andrew Lesnie, because his photography, he's the Oscar winner here. He won the Oscar for turning a little pig on a little farm into one of the most magical places. And then Peter Jackson said, "Come, work with me." After working on Babe, Peter Jackson said, "Come work with me in Middle-earth." But for this kind of 4K resolution to be available now, for us to see more of the details of what Andrew lit and how he lit the scenes and how he photographed them, this is the most exciting thing for me. And we have to talk about what material content will be on the commercial release. We're still consumers. We're still talking about it from that perspective of what did we buy already? Why do I want to double dip? Blah, blah, blah. We'll get to that conversation in a moment. But I just want to say my own personal excitement is just about the aesthetics. It's purely about thinking no more artifacting, where somebody lights a light in a dark room and all I can see are black blocks around artifacting. You know how much a pain in the ass that's been to watch a movie and not be distracted by that?
And then you have to remember with the high dynamic range, the world of Middle-earth, Rivendell, think Rivendell and all these different places. There's such nuance of color and luminance in the image, and you're going to see all of that for the first time ever. I mean, this will be a better presentation than you experienced in the movie theaters. This new 4K, this new 4K digital intermediate, because of the high dynamic range, because of the improvement in technology in the last 20 years, you will never have seen the films looking this good before. The Lord of the Rings films. Now, the Hobbit films were shot digitally in, I believe, 5K resolution. So the Hobbit films are going, you're going to see a dramatic improvement there too from the Blu-ray, but it won't be as big as the improvement on the Lord of the Rings. I can't wait. There's nothing I'm more excited about right now. I would have to say next to, maybe along with the Game of Thrones 4K release that HBO did, which is the whole series of Game of Thrones. There's no doubt that the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit in 4K is the big big release of the year that everybody's excited about, myself included.
Question from the chat. When you say it's going to look better than theatrical, then why would anyone go back to theaters?
Well, see, you have to remember the Lord of the Rings films were finished in 2001, 2002, 2003 using the technology of the time, right? They were finished by and large. They were, I think the original Fellowship especially was almost entirely photochemical, that process. And even the later two films, when they were doing digital finishing on some of those, the digital finishing process, the digital intermediate process, was very primitive at the time. It was brand new. So the technology we have now today is so much better in terms of resolution, in terms of how it handles color and contrast information. And you add to that the fact that you are, so now remember, when you're seeing a film print in the theater, when you're seeing a film print, the image that you're seeing is several generations down from the original camera negative. Because the way they would do it back in the photochemical days is they would take the original camera negative, they would make interpositives from that, they would edit on the interpositive, and then they would make dupe negatives and then show negatives for to sending out to theaters. So you're already multiple generations down from the negative. For the first time ever, you are going to see a direct scan from the negative. So it's going to be phenomenal.
This is definitely something I'm enthused about as well.
And by the way, when this 4K image gets shown in the theater, which I'm sure it will at some point, extraordinary. I watch on my 4K stuff on a front projection screen with a 110-inch projection screen. I can't wait for this. I can't wait for these box sets. I'm going to just marathon these things like crazy when they come in. I can't. It's going to be a feast for the eyes. And oh, by the way, a feast for the ears too, because they're going to have new Dolby Atmos sound mixes.
Oh, wow. That's the next question. You're leading me right into that. Yeah. There's a new Dolby Atmos sound mix. Okay. Right. All right. We're going to talk at a little bit near the end about what kind of gear, what kind of equipment people are going to need to purchase to be able to do 4K ultra high def for a decent home theater system. Yeah. I don't have a large house. I don't have a big home. I have a really fairly decent sized 2-bedroom apartment. So I don't need to get a home theater system at 6.1 the way that I would perhaps if I had like a ranch house and there was nobody around me, Right. So, but I do have neighbors right next to me in these walls.
Yeah, and we can talk about that. There are a lot of really good options for. I mean, there are some tremendous options for equipment. You can go all out with the full 9.2 speaker array, or you can get now what's called a sound bar that attaches right to your 4K display. And some of these new sound bars can actually simulate Atmos sound by bouncing sound off of the walls. It actually scans your room acoustically, and it creates little delays in the sound that it casts around the room, so that what you hear as a listener sounds like full surround sound.
Oh wow, that sounds fantastic.
Amazing. Yeah.
Oh, that sounds so cool. Okay, so for consumers who want to know what am I buying, we now understand from the information we've gotten officially from Warner Brothers Home Entertainment, WBHE, that this release, this coming 4K UHD release of both motion picture trilogies, will have no extras at all. The one that comes out right now this fall, and that means it is a bare bones movie only edition.
Correct.
Okay. Now,
but the important thing to note is it's got both the theatrical and the extended cuts.
Yes.
It's got both versions of that, and it's and the discs are only 4K. There's no Blu-rays in there.
Exactly.
The sound, it'll have Dolby Atmos sound, and it'll have the high dynamic range. High dynamic range comes in a bunch of different flavors. The base flavor is HDR10, but it's also going to have Dolby Vision on it, which is a little bit more dynamic. It has a couple more bits of color depth. So you'll have so all the options will be covered. But yeah, this is absolutely a movie-only release that's coming in December.
Okay, and for fans who are maybe complaining, do I have to double dip and buy the next edition that comes out next summer? Well, here's where the rubber meets the road. And this is probably the real nitty-gritty part that a lot of our audience wants us to get to, okay? There is no need to double dip because what they're trying to release right now with this 4K is not to duplicate all the other stuff that they know you already have. They just want to release 4K only movies only, to complement your existing library, because they know that we are completists. If nothing else,
Correct.
Ringer fans are definitely completists. I know that is true.
And my audience certainly is
Well,
too.
that is true.
The movie enthusiast audience. They're absolutely.
Yes. So if you already have what I have, which are all extended editions, I never watch theatrical anymore, ever.
Yeah, they're
Neither. Womp womp. So if you have what I have, kids, which is the full set of the trilogy, both trilogies, then this is the final complement to complete your library. But what is coming out next year? Let's identify that.
So it's called the Middle Earth like Ultimate Collection, I think, is sort of what they're tagging it right now.
Mm-hmm.
And the first thing I should say is I should give Warner Brothers a lot of credit for letting people know that this is coming.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yes.
because some studios
Yes.
don't do that. Some studios always, there's another one right around the corner, but they don't tell you in advance that that's the case. To their credit, Warner Brothers has said, hey, you can get the movies only in 4K now, brand new remasters, beautiful. Or if you want to wait until next summer, you can get the super deluxe box set. And
For many years, like when the Stanley Kubrick collection had come out, and Warner Brothers did the same thing. They told the audience ahead of time, we're putting out another edition later.
Right.
Didn't they?
And that's so you as a consumer, as a fan, can make a smart decision with your money, right? And
that is helpful.
That's very helpful. So what's coming out next year will be obviously it'll be a box set that will have the remastered 4K remastered Hobbit films and Lord of the Rings films. It'll be the same discs that you're getting on December 1st. You'll get those. Then you'll get the Hobbit Blu-rays, and it'll be the movies and the theatrical and extended edition of the Hobbit Blu-rays, and those will probably be the existing discs that you already have, Blu-ray discs. And then you're going to get the same thing for the Lord of the Rings, except for the Lord of the Rings is going to be a brand new master from the new 4K digital intermediate. Now, remember I said earlier that the Hobbit was shot in 5K already, so the existing Blu-rays are as good as they can get. There's no need to remaster those films. But the Lord of the Rings films on Blu-ray will be fully remastered from this new 4K scan. So the new Blu-rays will have the new 4K image, the remastered image, and they'll look even better than the previous Blu-rays did.
But it won't be true 4K. It will just
won't be true 4K, no, but you'll get all the benefits of the new remaster and the new color grade, and it will be improved over the Blu-rays you already have.
Okay.
So you'll get basically all the films, all versions in 4K and Blu-ray remastered. And presumably there will be some swag and some, knickknacks and art books and things like that.
I've seen them. They have a beautiful glowing ring on a piece of lava. They have an art book, I think, and they have a key of Erebor for the Hobbit trilogy. They do have some nice knickknacks.
Yeah, so it'll be some very cool, and I'm sure the packaging will be very lovely sitting on your shelf. So then the plan is Warner Brothers intends to create some new extras.
Some new extras. This is talking about just replacing this Blu-ray. This is what is coming out next year.
The movie discs only, because my understanding, and I think is that the appendices are not going to be in this new set.
That is correct.
And the reason being is because Warner Brothers knows you already have all the appendices on Blu-ray. You've already got all that content, so why rebuy that content, right? So the content, the new special feature content that is going to go into that set will be new stuff. And I believe it's up in the air yet what that's going to be. I think that's all being worked out and being discussed. But so there will be some new extras.
I can tell you what Warner Brothers Home Entertainment told me. They said there will be one additional piece of extra content. And that's all they said.
Okay.
That quote unquote, there will be one additional piece, and they use the letters EC, which means extra content.
Right.
And that's all I know. That's all I know.
And hopefully it'll be something good and worthwhile. And
I don't know what it will be, but they're not going to regurgitate all of the appendices or provide any of those discs on next summer's release.
Right.
It's just going to be the new buffed up Blu-ray, but it's the nomenclature of what they're calling it that I would like to complain or have a little caveat emptor moment. Okay, they should not be identifying it as the Ultimate Edition. Is that what they're calling it?
I think it's up in the air. I think that was what the press release said, but I don't know if that's going to be the final language.
Well, we want to roll forward with previous conversations that you have had with us about the so-called unicorn edition. Now, this is what we've talked about for many, many years, to the point that a lot of people in fandom know that term. And we just started talking about it on our interview at Meltdown Comics, but now the unicorn edition is something that every person in fandom identifies as all those new materials that have been withheld, including audition tapes, blooper reels from 1999 and 2000, and other cut scenes like Arwen, Liv Tyler showing up at Helm's Deep, and that all that footage exists.
Yeah,
how about
deleted scenes? There are lots of deleted scenes from both the Hobbit and the Lord of the Rings films that exist. There's the Cannes show reel, which was the first time anyone in public saw.
Thank you for reminding me. Yeah, the Cannes show reel. Yes.
Right. There were, and there was a film pitch, or there was a video pitch that was done for New Line, which is what convinced New Line to actually pick up the rights to do these films. There's lots of stuff there, and I think there's even storyboard animatic versions of some of the films that were created in pre-production when they were in pre-production on the films. There's I can tell you from talking to Michael over the years, Michael Pellerin, for many years now, Peter and Michael intentionally saved some great stuff, some of the best stuff. The hope being that there would be an opportunity to put it on disc eventually.
Exactly.
In a unicorn edition.
Yes.
So there is an absolute gold mine. It's not just a little bit of content. There's a whole bunch of content you haven't seen yet, and it's tremendous stuff. And it's a gold mine that's sitting out there kind of waiting to be mined. And so we don't know what exactly yet is going to be on the Middle-earth collection, but there is a wealth of material that could be released that fans would love to see.
Right, there is.
Is that different from Costa Botes?
Yes, thank you, Justin, in my ear. The fans also had other releases on Blu-ray that included the extraordinary, like fly on the wall, Costa Botes directed documentary series for all three films. Those are not being repackaged. Those are not coming out now. Okay.
And I think Costa Botes, I think it's a 36-minute or so presentation that was done for New Line. Convinced Bob Shea and Michael Lynn to go with Peter on these films. I think a lot of the material that's in that is stuff that Costa Botes shot.
Wow.
So I mean, there's just a ton of stuff. I mean, there's a ton of stuff out there that remains unmined, untapped.
Indeed, and we're reminding the consumers in our audience and the collectors and just the general fans, the 4K releases that are coming out this fall and next summer do not include those materials.
Right.
So that leaves the question of what happens next with those. We don't know.
Correct.
There's lots and lots of places, I think, where that could land. Don't you think?
Yeah, there's all kinds of possibilities, and it's going to be interesting to see sort of what comes of all that stuff. And I'll just be very curious to see what comes of. Yes, I'll be curious to see what new content, what this one piece of new content or whatever it might be that's going to go in the set next summer.
Yeah,
that remains to be seen. We don't know what that's going to be yet, and I don't know that Michael's involved in that yet, but he might be. I don't know, so that's all up in the air yet. But there's
without any statement from Warner Brothers Home Entertainment, we might have to put to rest the idea of a unicorn edition ever happening.
Yeah, I think it's pretty clear, given the wealth of material that's available that's untapped, and given what you said about there'll be one piece of new content or whatever on that set next summer, it's unlikely that that's going to be the sort of unicorn edition that everybody wants.
Okay, the only thing I can confirm is that nobody who worked on the previous appendices or the other stuff that we have on our Blu-rays, none of those people we know worked on this new extra content.
Right.
So it doesn't represent that.
I don't even think it's been produced yet. I think it's a lot of that is. I think one of the reasons why Warner Brothers came out with movie onlys first is because it literally took almost the entire year of 2020 to remaster these films for 4K. It took that. Wet has been working on this since early in the year, working on it all through the pandemic, all through the summer. I mean, it took a long time to do that, and of course, to create any new content is going to take more time. And so I think that's why
Mhm.
it works out very well. First, if you know, there are going to be fans that only want the movies in 4K, so you'll have a chance to buy those in 3 or 4 weeks. And then, if you want to wait for more content, you'll get that next summer. But that new content, whatever it is, takes time to produce. And I don't think it's even that process is even. It's only just now kind of starting, I think.
What took Wed Workshop so long? What takes the time to
Well,
up res?
well. So think about it. So you think about films as huge as the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit films are, not just the theatrical versions, but the extended versions. And if you're talking about going back to the original camera negative, you've got to go find all that camera negative. You've got to sort it all. You've got to make sure you've got every piece of it. You've got to scan it. Then you've got to organize it and conform it and conform it to the edits of the films, which are different for the theatrical, right? It's an enormously complicated process. And of course, at every step of the way, Peter's got to check it, make sure it's correct, sign off on every step of that. And so it takes a long time. It takes a team of people a long time to do that stuff. For 6 films and 2 versions of every film, it's an enormously complicated process.
Roger
insane.
Deakins
Especially
is
during a pandemic.
Yeah.
Roger Deakins is an Oscar-winning cinematographer from Blade Runner and Shawshank Redemption. He has a podcast that he started during quarantine, and every episode he laments the lack of control the cinematographer has for home video releases. And in fact, he was just talking about revisiting Shawshank, and he went to all the digital platforms and DVDs, and he had this terrible color-corrected version that he didn't really approve. And it took him hours to find a newer version that had the original theatrical coloring that he had approved on. Roger Deakins did. So is there any sense here that we are going to get as close to the theatrical coloring and grading that we saw in theaters?
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously Andrew Lesnie has passed. He's no longer with us, but Peter Jackson is supervising that aspect of the remastering. And also Peter Doyle, who I believe was the original colorist for the films theatrically, he's involved. So they're going to get it exactly the way they want it, and presumably that'll be very close to the original theatrical. Now keep in mind, these are HDR grades, so it's not going to be exactly theatrical, but you're going to see it exactly the way they want them to be for all time. So that should be terrific. Part of the problem with what Deakins is talking about and by the way, the podcast is called Team Deakins, and it's excellent. Part of the problem is that a lot of the people at the studios don't have that level of knowledge about these films, and so when this stuff goes out to streaming platforms and things, they sort of take the elements they have, and they don't really have that knowledge about what's properly colored, what's not properly colored, and then every streaming service, when they ingest that stuff, ingest it a little bit differently, and that can affect the color. On top of that, everybody's TVs has slightly different color settings, right? So that's the other problem. And it's really interesting because Hollywood, the film industry, has this new initiative called Filmmaker Mode, which is that for about a year now, they've been working to try to get all the manufacturers and all the various content platforms to adopt it. And what it would be is it would be a button on your remote for your TV, so that when you're watching a movie, you can hit Filmmaker Mode and it will go to the exact settings that the filmmaker would prefer you to see that as. And that's something that's ongoing. But yeah, it's definitely a problem. I mean, back in the days before even HD, the analog sort of 4x3 square TVs we all had, black and white and then fuzzy color and stuff. The television format was called NTSC. And the joke in the industry was it stood for never twice the same color, because literally every TV had slightly different settings.
Oh, that's funny.
And that got better with HD, and obviously with Blu-ray, and it's getting better again with 4K. I can tell you that when you buy equipment now, TV, a player, in 4K, the experience that you're getting in terms of the color contrast, all that, is you're within about 5% of 5 to 10% of perfect. And that's a very big difference from back in the days of analog and DVD, where you were barely seeing 40% of the quality that was in the original film. You were only seeing about 40% of that. Blu-ray gave us about 60 to maybe 80%. Now with 4K, we're getting into the neighborhood of like 90 to 95%. So the experience is just improving dramatically for the home.
For people like me who are just getting out for the first time to upgrade their television set, let's begin with the prevailing conventional wisdom that the old high definition 1080p that you got, any high def TV set, you could get a choice in the marketplace between a refresh rate of 60 megahertz, right, or 120 as a refresh rate, which was usually more expensive, but always guaranteed a better quality high definition.
Well, not always.
Not always?
Because
I was going to ask, does that hold true anymore as a barometer?
Yeah, no, because a lot of the times film is a medium that operates at a 30 frames per second. 20, video 24, technically it's 24 frames a second for film, but it's, 30 is about the sort of standard convention. Anything over that starts to look like video, like a soap opera. And that's why a lot of these TVs, they advertise higher refresh rates, but those higher refresh rates tend to benefit sports and things like that. When you put that stuff on for movie content, you're altering the look of the film. You're altering the way it looks.
Well, that's what happened with the high frame rate release of the Hobbit trilogy, which most of the audience worldwide did not take a liking to.
Right. That's correct. Exactly. That because it makes it look like video, and it, film has a certain kind of a look, a certain kind of a texture. Even when we're in the world of digital now, in digital filmmaking, there's a sort of a really kind of fine grain texture that the image has that signifies what we know of as a film. And that's what we're familiar with. And you need that, you need to preserve that in order to have that film-like experience. Now, there are filmmakers like Ang Lee that are working in much higher frame rates. Billy Lynn's Long Halftime Walk is a perfect example, and I think Gemini Man, and you can get those on 4K in the much higher frame rates, but it looks like video. It really looks like video. It doesn't have that really cinematic quality, and so it's important to say. Obviously, Hobbit was shot in a higher frame rate, but it's not going to be seen on that higher frame rate on these 4K discs.
Do you think the home video audience would be more receptive because it is in our home, it's on our televisions, it's on our iPad? Do you think it would be even smarter for next year's release to put the high frame rate versions of The Hobbit?
I don't think so. And the reason is that most consumer TVs can't really show it properly, and some consumer TVs can't show it properly. It's really kind of the difference between live video and video gaming, a video game look versus a film look. And I know that there are fans who would like to see that, but I think it's unlikely. I think it's
That's
unlikely.
it. Now you're talking about a generational break in the conversation between older fans and younger fans. And this is where I find my personal interests are kind of it really peaked. I'm interested in the way that people consume their diet of whatever it is. And I made a documentary about the way that people in Western culture, at least, consume Tolkien and his literary works. And the pop culture response to Tolkien is what we got into. But now we're talking about a popular culture response to technology changing the way we look at cinema, or what is, passive entertainment that we watch. A lot of people on their sports and on their video games are generations ahead of wanting everything to be at high frame rate, while there's a whole world of other people saying, I cannot relate to that. It doesn't look like a movie.
It is a little bit of a break. It is a little bit of a break in terms of the aesthetic. And so the interesting thing is,
it's generational. I think it's a weird break by age, I think now.
Yeah, it's definitely that in sort of taste in terms of cinephile versus gamers and that kind of a break. But the interesting thing is, for a while, Blu-ray for a while with HD and Blu-ray, there was a Blu-ray 3D format that you can. It's still supported occasionally. You can still get occasional releases, and especially in Europe, it's very popular. But it's interesting because it's very hard to get 3D TVs like the HD TVs that support 3D anymore. because it was kind of seen as a fad and it kind of faded away. But here's the interesting thing. James Cameron in particular, the film industry and James Cameron in particular, he's the one driving it, is working on a new 3D process called auto stereoscopic. And what that means is 3D without glasses. So you'll just look at a screen and you'll see the illusion of depth in the display. And it's not something you have to put special glasses on for.
This is Black Mirror level stuff now.
It is, and they're working hard on it. And I've seen every year at CES, I see new demonstrations of it, and it's getting better and better and better. They haven't quite cracked it yet. But the goal of the industry is to get you to a place where at home you can see auto stereoscopic 3D, and also in theaters. So you can have a 3D experience in theaters that's auto stereoscopic without glasses.
And I still have my old Blu-ray of Coraline with the blue and red side by side.
Exactly.
Piece of paper, the paper fold out red and blue glasses.
Right.
But, you know, I almost got onto the bandwagon a few years ago for the 3D Blu-ray thing.
Yeah.
And it was primarily because of my fascination with stop motion animation and Coraline and, you know, things like that. I have to admit, I did not bite.
Yeah.
And I might be one of those consumers that turned the marketplace down on that.
Well, and you know, I've obviously, my projector can do 3D, and I've got a lot of 3D discs, and I find it interesting, but at least in terms of the quality of the home experience, I would never choose to watch 3D versus 2D. 3D is interesting, and sometimes it's good and sometimes it's bad, but the technology is not quite there, and the glasses that you have in the home are either passive or active, but they give some people a headache. They obviously require recharging, and they have to be synced to the display. So it's kind of a finicky thing, and they're also fragile. So if you've got kids, a lot of people's glasses get broken, you know, that kind of thing.
Yes.
It's not quite there yet. But if you can have that experience without the glasses, and it is a really good, you know, 4K image without artifacts and ghosting and things like that, I think you could see 3D come roaring back. But it's a few years away.
I got the Hobbit trilogy in 3D Blu-ray. I bought a special 3D Blu-ray player. Can I play this new 4K set on my 3D Blu-ray player?
No, you have to have a new 4K Ultra HD player. Here's the thing. A 4K Ultra HD player is also a Blu-ray 3D player, a Blu-ray player, a DVD player. It'll play your music CDs. It'll play high-resolution music CDs. It's a universal player. That's the good news. But you do need a new player that is specifically 4K Ultra HD compatible, and you need a new display. You need a display that is 4K Ultra HD compatible.
Will I get anything if my TV is 1080p, but I have a 4K player? Will it look better to me?
So here's what you can do. If you put a 4K Ultra HD disc in a 4K Ultra HD player, but you've only got a regular TV, a 1080p TV, you can downsample. You can set your Blu-ray player to the 4K player to downsample to HD, and you will see an image, and it will be good quality. It's not going to be nearly the quality though of an actual 4K display.
And it defeats the purpose, actually.
It very much defeats the purpose.
It defeats the purpose of all the work that they've done for a year and a half. And you know what? You know, Bill, we're friends. I love you, but you've been holding out on me you knew about this. You bloody knew about this for over a year, and nobody told us at the One Ring. I'm like, whoa.
Oh my God.
So this is
I've
great.
been kind of talking about it on the bits for a long time.
You have?
On social media.
Okay, see, well, I've been buried. My head has been buried in Middle Earth somewhere.
We've been sort of hinting, because look, the thing of it is, in the position I'm in, I've been doing this for 23 some years now, and I've been in the industry before that. There's a lot of things I know about that are coming that I can't talk about.
Mm-hmm.
And then there are things I know about that I can sort of hint at. And then there are things I know about that I can talk about. I mean, you know how it is. It's that kind of situation, because sometimes if you talk about these projects too early, before plans have been finalized and before they've gotten everyone involved, talking about that stuff early can blow it all up. So it's, you know, you have to kind of be careful what you can say and what you can't.
Okay.
And obviously there are people who are working on all these things in the industry, in the trenches, at the you know, the video mastering places and stuff that that are they don't want to risk their job by everything, like everything they tell you going out and on being public and all that kind of stuff. And so,
Mhm.
so yeah, we tend to hear everything, and there's not much that happens in the industry that in terms of Blu-ray 4K releases, that kind of thing, that we don't know about. But we have to be careful what we can talk about. But we have been for most of this year hinting at, look, Weta, we can tell you for sure Weta is working on it, because early in the year there were all these rumors about how, oh, it's going to be out on this day and this, and it's like there was all of that. And we said, listen, it's coming. We can tell you for sure it's coming. We can confirm that it's being worked on. It's being worked on by Weta. They're doing it right. But this process takes time, and in the middle of a pandemic, this has obviously been a year that's full of craziness and uncertainty, and it's like, so we don't know exactly, when they'll be able to get it done, what that street date is. I've seen many times where a studio will say, we're targeting Q4 of the year, the holidays, and then they blow past that. And then it's like, the next summer that things finally come out.
HBO Max just added all 6 Peter Jackson Middle-earth films. Is on HBO Max, and I just subscribed. There's a chance HBO Max might start streaming in 4K like Netflix does. What is there a noticeable difference between streaming 4K and these discs that they want to charge $130 for?
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's so. What's important in terms of whether it's a Blu-ray image or like an HD or a 4K image, what's important in terms of the quality you're going to experience is the amount of compression and what's called the data rate, right? So think of it like a water flowing through a pipe, right? A DVD pipe is like this, a Blu-ray pipe is like this, a 4K pipe is like this. Streaming pipe is smaller.
Less numbers, less zeros and ones, basically less zeros and ones, right?
Right. That means they have to compress it more, because obviously they're sending it out over the internet to lots of people. And if it was a huge data stream coming down to you, it would take forever your thing would be buffering all the time.
And you also have a problem with downloading and watching things in 4K, from what I'm hearing, with competition on your internet provider in your home, dropping your consumer level of your download rate of getting the data. So that's a thing that is avoided entirely when you purchase the library disc, the physical disc that you own, and you'll never have to worry about competing with your own internet service provider at all.
Yeah, a disc is always going to be the best quality versus streaming.
Absolutely.
And where you see it is in image depth, is in the depth of the color, is in the dimensionality of the image. So a really high compressed streaming HD film versus a really high compressed or like a no compression or very low compression Blu-ray version, you're going to see more detail. You're going to see more color, deeper color. It's just going to be like there's be a little bit more depth, and obviously in 4K that problem is even more noticeable. A typical 4K disc has a band rate of up to like 80 gigabits per second. I think is a huge amount. And Netflix is maybe 20, 24. So the data stream is significantly different.
That's very different. That's a distinction I did not know.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
Is Lord of the Rings the definitive movie to upgrade to 4K for? Like, is this
absolutely
movie going to change the 4K industry?
Well, it's a biggie. I'll tell you that, when you think of the movies that everybody really wanted on 4K, obviously they're like the Star Wars films. But in terms of the real cinephile experience, it was like the Lawrence of Arabia, Stanley Kubrick's 2001: A Space Odyssey, which were shot on like 65 millimeter. And so there's so much information in that negative that people aren't seeing normally when they're at home. And I can tell you that the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit films they're the white whale. They're one of the big white whales, and they're finally here. They're finally coming, and it's exciting, and a lot of people are very excited about it. I can't wait. I mean, the world of Middle Earth is so ripe with interesting colors and textures that are not Earth-like, right? They're not the environment that we see every day out in the world. It's got that sort of magical quality, that sort of luminous, glowing quality. And oh man, I can't wait to see this stuff in 4K. It ought to be extraordinary.
Let me ask you this. You and I both know kind of industry trends, and we're in a COVID world and every dollar matters right now. does Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit in 4K have to sell well to guarantee that we continue to get 4K releases of other movies going forward? Is this kind of like the benchmark release for this platform?
I actually think that that's not necessarily the case. I think they will absolutely sell well. The Lord of the Rings and Hobbit films will be the big seller of the year, I think, in terms of 4K. No question.
Well, it's clear this is the title that everybody's been asking for a long time.
Right. The audience is huge. These films have sold well on every format they've ever been released on. That's a big deal. Now, it's interesting because we've talked a lot on the bits in recent years about how physical media is kind of in decline. Obviously, every studio is creating their own streaming service, and they're focusing less and less on physical media releases, Blu-ray and 4K discs. But here's the interesting thing. The pandemic has crushed the theatrical business, has absolutely shut it down. So then at that point, in terms of the amount of revenue that you can generate as a studio, when you can't put films in theaters, your big films in theaters, you've got two options. You've got your streaming platform and you've got physical media. So all of a sudden this year, all the studios got much more serious about, with the exception of Disney, which is odd, but they're making a huge bet on Disney Plus as their future. Yes. Every other studio said, oh my God, what have we got that we can put on disc quick? You know, and so that's what you've been seeing this year. The fourth quarter has just been a glut of 4K catalog titles that everybody wants on Blu-ray and in 4K. So these films are going to sell enormously. They're going to make mammoth profit on
Cliff,
these.
I have a surprise for you, Cliff.
What's the surprise, Justin? What's the surprise?
We have the very first clip in 4K ever shown to the public.
We do. Yes, I know. I was telling the audience about that at the top of the show. It's incredibly exciting. Before we show that clip, I want to ask real quick, because Bill, we're here at this moment in November, early November, with what the American marketplace calls, Black Friday sales that are going to be online and available not just after Thanksgiving, but before. And how much money tops? Tell me a dollar figure. How much can you spend reasonably on a new 4K ultra high definition TV set and it not be too much and it'll be just right? I want that Goldilocks and the Three Bears cup of porridge, which is just right. Okay.
Yeah. So it's interesting. There are TV, especially with Black Friday coming up, with, we're in the middle of sort of football, sports seasons and various things like that. The holidays are coming up. There's always, and especially with the pandemic, there are going to be all kinds of sales. There are already kinds of amazing sales for 4K displays, 4K hardware. I would say, if you go to your local Costco, or if you go to your shop on Amazon or Best Buy, you can get a pretty damn good 4K set for in the neighborhood of like $700 or so. If you want to get a really good one, you can spend, maybe the top end are going to be like, $3,000-$4,000, but you can get a really, 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 really good set for between $500 and say maybe $1,200, somewhere in that range.
What's the difference between?
There are lots of options, and that depends on your screen sizes and what works best for you. But there are a lot of good displays in that range.
What's OLED?
OLED.
Yeah, OLED. It's or there's LED and there's organic LED. And it is a way that the display manufacturers, rather than having how they illuminate pixels, and what OLED does versus LED is some TVs have a backlight, and some can actually activate the light with the pixels. So sometimes if you have a backlight, the backlight can be uneven. So the more money you spend, the more money you spend, the brighter the image is going to be. And the brighter your TV image is going to be, then that is good for 4K, because it allows you to show the really, really bright brights. It allows you to show the really, really dark darks. If you're buying a 4K TV, I would say the thing to keep in mind is to try to get one that has Dolby Vision. Because what Dolby Vision does is it's a version of the high dynamic range that readjusts the image for every scene to optimize it for your display and for your viewing environment, basically. So like with HDR10, the player in the display said, okay, here's your maximum dark and here's your maximum bright. And then the film just runs the gamut. With Dolby Vision, those adjustments vary throughout the movie to give you the maximally best image for that shot, for that scene, all throughout the movie. So it's a more active, there's more active metadata. So it's more dynamic and it makes more adjustments, and that gives you a better image. So unless you're going to spend a ton of money, make sure you get a display that's got Dolby Vision capability.
So
that's
the
a
clip
good
we're
tip.
about to show on that will be streamed via YouTube and whatever, is it going to look even better than what we're showing today on a disc on your TV?
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. Yeah, it's gonna. The disc will be phenomenal. What you're going to see on YouTube will be compressed. It'll be 4K, but it'll be compressed. But the other thing is you won't see high dynamic range on YouTube, unless Warner Brothers is providing that. But probably you won't see high dynamic range. So yeah, what you're going to get, this is going to give you a taste of what it's going to look like, but it's going to look even better on disc.
This is a great time to be a Tolkien fan right now. We have the excitement and the energy of Amazon Prime getting their people together creatively to shoot in New Zealand right now a Second Age of Middle-earth story. And we have the 4K ultra high def within our fingertips. I can tell you the energy is quite palpable, isn't it?
It's so close, you can almost taste it.
It's like, yeah, it's
3 weeks away or so. Yes. It's like, oh, it's so close.
So we're gonna show this, and keep in mind the audience. Thank you for joining us to watch this, and this is exciting to be able to preview a 4K clip. But again, you're at the mercy of your internet provider. You're at the mercy of YouTube compression. It's not exactly what you would see on a physical disc, but that is right around the corner. Pre-orders have already been on Amazon already, haven't they?
Yes, Amazon, Best Buy, all the major retailers. There's a regular version. You can get a deluxe version of Lord of the Rings 4K that's got a replica of the One Ring. I think that's on Amazon.
There's a Steelcase edition, right?
Yeah, exactly. And various retailers have Steelbook packaging for this. I think Best Buy's got Steelbook packaging, and I think in the UK, Zavi has got. So there's sort of different choices, but yeah, it's coming. It's close.
Indeed. And so, Justin, do we have one clip or two clips?
I don't know.
Okay, well then let's just play. Let's play the clips we have. The latest.
The heart of the mountain. The Arkenstone. Thror named it the King's Jewel. He took it as a sign that his right to rule was divine. All would pay homage to him, even the great elven king, Thranduil. As the great wealth of the dwarves grew, their store of goodwill ran thin. No one knows exactly what began the rift. The elves say the dwarves stole their treasure. The dwarves tell another tale. They say the elf king refused to give them their rightful pay. It is sad, Frodo, how old alliances can be broken, how friendships between peoples can be lost. And for what? Slowly the days turned sour, and the watchful nights closed in. Thror's love of gold had grown too fierce. A sickness had begun to grow within him. It was a sickness of the mind. And where sickness thrives, bad things will follow. The heart of the mountain. The Arkenstone. Thror named it the King's Jewel. He took it as a sign that his right to rule was divine. All would pay homage to him, even the great elven king, Thranduil. As the great wealth of the dwarves grew, their store of goodwill ran thin. No one knows exactly what began the rift. The elves say the dwarves stole their treasure. The dwarves tell another tale. They say the elf king refused to give them their rightful pay. It is sad, Frodo, how old alliances can be.
And there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. I didn't see it because I'm pre-recording this, but I'm glad you just saw that. Welcome.
We're very envious of all of you.
I'm sorry. Like, okay. We're getting ready to close down for Torn Tuesday, but I believe we might actually have Bill. Let's talk for just a quick second before we exit the show about oh gosh, it was just on the tip of my tongue.
the new 4K, the Amazon series.
Well, if Amazon Prime is going to be streaming their series, do you think that they should also stream in 4K, or is the bandwidth just not there for that with the current streaming platforms? Because the more people who are downloading, the less and less the internet providers can handle it in a way.
No, well, that's correct. But I can tell you that the Amazon Prime already streams in 4K with high dynamic range.
Yeah.
Now, it's not as good as what you would see on a disc, but it's still pretty good. It's better than what you would see on a Blu-ray or some other, a DVD, something like that. So they absolutely already stream in 4K. In fact, Amazon Prime is the sci-fi show The Expanse, which used to be on Sci-Fi Channel, which is it's now exclusive to Amazon Prime. That's in 4K and high dynamic range. It looks amazing. So you can almost guarantee that it'll be on the new Lord of the Rings show, Middle Earth show will be in 4K with high dynamic range on Amazon Prime.
I'm very excited because
HDR is different than HFR.
Correct. HFR is high frame rate. HDR is high dynamic range.
Very big difference.
And I can tell you, just to give you a quick example. So Blu-ray, the color depth, what's called, of Blu-ray was 8 bits. So 4K with HDR10 high dynamic range is 10 bits of color.
Ooh.
And like if you get Dolby Vision is 12 bits. So you can see that like you've got 2 more bits of color depth and information in 4K than you had on regular Blu-ray. And there's more even still if you have Dolby Vision, the flavor, on your content and on your display. So it makes a real difference.
One last angle of a question for maybe this is like a newbie level, but a lot of people have gotten their 4K TV sets and they look at what it's doing to their favorite shows and they're like, oh, I don't like that. What is it doing? There's an automatic setting on most 4K sets, which is doing an unnecessary upscaling. Is that what it's called?
Yeah, it's a motion smoothing. It's like a motion. It's a sports mode. And unfortunately, a lot of the TV manufacturers ship their TVs in that mode. It's different. It's called different things, motion smoothing and various things like that. You have to turn that off. When
on your settings.
Movie content. In fact, you should always turn it off. Period, because it's terrible. And
it
negatively affects movies and TV content. To turn the motion smoothing off always.
Absolutely. And this last question: when fans purchase their Lord of the Rings and Hobbit ultra high def 4K, is it going to look like what the Hobbit looked like at the high frame rate of 48 frames per second?
No.
It's not going to look like a telenovela or that video quality look. That's just to send this last reassurance to the audience that what you're getting with 4K ultra high def is not what if you're thinking it's not going to look like that.
Right. Correct. And to reiterate once again, also, the Fellowship of the Ring should look like it should. It shouldn't have the green tint that the dreaded green tint that everybody talked about on the Blu-rays. This is a brand new 4K digital intermediate built from the ground up, scanned from the original film elements, a brand new color grade supervised by Peter Jackson with Peter Doyle as the colorist. They're going to get it right.
It's going to be very, very exciting. And if you turn the sports upscaling or the motion smoothing, turn it off. When you buy your set and plug it in, don't call me and tell me that your Lord of the Rings Fellowship of the Ring looks like a video soap opera. Don't, because we're telling you now, turn that thing off on your new ultra high def set. Just do that.
And by the way, when you get new content, when you get a new 4K TV, you get new 4K Blu-ray player, there are a lot of different discussion forums around. Home Theater Forum, AVS Forum. There are a lot of good places you can go to say, and you can search in the forums and say, okay, this is the TV I've got, this is the player I've got. What should I have all the settings at? And they will tell you, here's the optimum setting for each thing, and they'll give you all kinds of color, whatever you need. So if you have trouble or if anything is confusing, you can go there and you can get lots of information and you can have questions answered. And there are lots of people just like you with experts that will answer those questions. And one of the most important things to do when you buy a new 4K TV with a 4K player is to make sure you get a really good video cable. The HDMI cable, it's called. You want to make sure you get the latest version of the HDMI cable so that the player and the TV talk together correctly.
And what is that latest version of HDMI? Is it like a USB?
I think it's HDMI 2.1, I believe.
Okay.
You want to just make sure it's a good quality cable. The newer good quality cable should be able to do everything. Everything should talk together correctly.
Okay.
Excellent.
It's a little thing, but it's important to remember.
HDMI 2.1. I will talk to the people at the counter. I've been shopping aggressively to get a new ultra high def, and now I have the reason. I have the raison d'être. I've got it. I'm ready, and I want to thank you for your advice. And I'm pretty sure that if the fans come to the Digital Bits website or to the OneRing.net, we can probably share an article that we can share between us to tell people how to make sure that they turn that thing off and get the best experience of watching their Lord of the Rings in 4K. We can help each other out to inform our fans.
Yeah, yes. Absolutely. And I'm also on Facebook and Twitter at Bill Hunt Bits and at TheDigitalBits.com. So I'm always answering questions for people, and you can email me, and I'm always there to help.
Final thoughts. If you were working at the studio and you had any input on what the next year's 4K bonus content would be, what would be your opinion that Warner Brothers should include?
Well, I think there's a lot of really cool archive material that is available. We talked about the show reels. We talked about the various presentation reels, the storyboard reels. There's outtakes. There's deleted scene. I mean, there's a lot of really good content that is waiting to be mined, that the people who worked on these films shot and have ready, and it's just an untapped resource. So I would say try to tap into that. And by the way, people like Michael Pellerin, they created all that content. They organized it. They know it. So there's nobody that knows that content better than they do.
Yeah, there's a lot of fans out there who love the appendices as much as they love anything else that's on their Blu-rays with the film itself. And that's why we've been so, glad to have you and Mr. Pellerin as guests, talking and sharing with the fans. This is an exciting time. Very much looking forward to that. And maybe we will make sure everybody understands what they're buying and what they're going to get, because next summer it's going to be, the same thing released for the Blu-ray version from ultra high def 4K scans, but it's not what we're buying right now this November. Okay, as long as we make that distinction.
Right, that's exactly right. Yeah, the summer set will include the 4K, but you'll also get remastered Lord of the Rings Blu-rays plus the existing Hobbit Blu-rays.
Oh, it will include all of it. It will include both. Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. See, that's one thing to note is a lot of times when you buy a 4K title, you get 4K plus you get a Blu-ray copy plus you get a digital copy. Mm-hmm. I believe it's 4K and digital in this package that's coming in December.
Got it.
There's no Blu-ray there. There's no Blu-ray there because again, we've talked about it. They know you've already got all the existing stuff. So
excellent. Good. Thank you for helping me make that distinction. Good. Absolutely. We've got facts. We've got the facts. Ladies and gentlemen, nothing but the facts, man.
We do. So, and we're only like 3.5 weeks away. I can't wait.
This is very exciting. All right. For more details, keep an eye on theonering.net. on our social media platforms, on Twitter, Instagram, and on the main website. There's more mischief to come. And again, thank you from the Digital Bits and from me appreciating your work for so many years. Thank you, Bill Hunt, again.
Thank you very much. I love you guys. I'm really glad. It's good to see you guys again. I can't wait till we can get together again in person.
Yes.
And talk about how great these movies are and chat with Michael. And I really appreciate what you guys do. So thank you for having me.
We'll be setting up something soon at Scum and Villainy Cantina when we have the opportunity, which is our new home where we broadcast from. And we'll say thank you to Justin, who is hiding in the ephemeral background.
In the ether web.
Yeah, the ether web. And so until next week, everybody, stay safe and be gentle with yourselves, especially during crazy anxiety times. So be real gentle, crack open a book, read The Lord of the Rings again. You'll enjoy it. You'll be glad you did. It's very therapeutic. And until then, we'll be back every Tuesday at 5 p.m. with more gossip and more news and more of what's in between those points on the radar. It's a sliding scale around here. We'll have some of that and more. Thank you for being with us, everybody. You can follow me, Clifford Broadway, online at QuickBeam2000 on my social platforms. And until next week, good night and good luck, or as I'd like to say, buenos noches y buena suerte.
Peace.
Bye, everyone.